The cargo bay of the transport ship Crucible of Valor was cold and gray. 200 cadets stood in neat rows, waiting for the briefing to begin. Some of them were tall and covered in scales. Others had 6 legs or bodies made of living crystal. A few looked like floating balls of gel. They came from dozens of worlds across the galaxy. They were the best young soldiers the Galactic Union had to offer. And then there was Maya Chen. She stood near the back of the formation. At 5 feet 6 inches tall, she barely reached the shoulder of the smallest alien around her. Her brown skin and black hair made her look plain compared to the colorful species nearby. She was the first and only human ever accepted into the Galactic Union Military Academy. Many of the other cadets had never seen a human before. Some of them had filed complaints about her presence. They said humans were too new, too primitive, too weak. Maya did not care what they thought. She had worked too hard to get here. The massive doors at the front of the cargo bay slid open. Commandant Vrexal walked in. He was a Korthani, a reptilian species known for their strength and military tradition. He stood 8 feet tall. His green scales shone under the lights. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled cadets like a predator looking at prey. "Today you stop being children," Vrexal said. His voice was deep and rough. "Today the trial of tempering begins." A screen behind him flickered to life. It showed a planet covered in thick jungles and dark swamps. Lightning flashed across its stormy sky. The image alone made several cadets shift nervously. "This is Nexar 7, the Commandant continued. "It is classified as a Class 3 death world. The atmosphere contains pockets of toxic gas. The average predator weighs over 400 kilograms. The plants will try to eat you. The ground itself is unstable." He paused to let his words sink in. "You will survive here for 30 days. You will travel 200 kilometers north to reach the extraction point. Anyone who fails to arrive will be considered dead or unworthy of this academy." A Velith cadet raised one of her crystal arms. "Sir, what is the expected casualty rate?" "For trained soldiers on a Class 3 world, 15%. Vrexal showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "For cadets, we have medical evacuation shuttles on standby. Use your emergency beacon if you want to quit. But know that pressing that beacon ends your military career forever." Maya listened carefully. She had studied Nexar 7 before the exercise. She knew the planet had roughly Earth-like gravity. The oxygen levels were actually higher than what she was used to. The temperature would be warm, but manageable. She had seen worse conditions during family camping trips. The cadets were given their survival kits. Maya opened hers and checked the contents. 1 knife, 1 water purifier, 1 emergency beacon, 3 days of ration bars. She frowned at the small amount of food but said nothing. She had learned to find her own food a long time ago. "Move to your assigned drop pods," Vrexal ordered. "May the stars watch over you." Maya walked to her pod. She found her assigned partner already inside. It was a Chirix named Clickseth, an insectoid creature with 6 legs, 4 arms, and large compound eyes. Clickseth was shaking so hard that its legs clicked against the metal floor. "We are going to die," Clickseth said. Its voice was high and buzzing. "I have read the survival statistics. My species has a 32% mortality rate on Class 3 worlds. We are not built for such environments." Maya strapped herself into her seat. "Have you ever been camping before?" "Camping?" Clickseth tilted its head. "You mean voluntarily sleeping outside, away from safety? Why would anyone do such a thing?" "For fun," Maya said simply. Clickseth stared at her with all of its eyes. It did not seem to understand the concept. The drop pod's door sealed shut. A countdown began on the small screen above them. Maya felt the familiar sensation of her stomach dropping as the pod launched from the ship. Through the tiny window, she watched the planet grow larger and larger. Flames licked at the edges of the pod as they entered the atmosphere. Clickseth made a sound like a tea kettle screaming. "We are burning! The pod is on fire!" "That's normal," Maya said. "It's just atmospheric entry. The heat shield will protect us." "How are you so calm?" Clickseth demanded. Maya thought about the question. She had jumped out of airplanes before. She had whitewater rafted through rapids that could crush bones. She had climbed mountains where a single wrong step meant death. Humans did these things for entertainment. They called it adventure sports. I guess I'm used to it, she said. The pod slammed into the ground with tremendous force. Maya's teeth rattled in her skull. Warning lights flashed red. The door blew off its hinges and thick, humid air rushed inside. It smelled like rotting plants and sulfur. Maya unbuckled herself and stepped out. Her boots sank into soft mud. They had landed in a swamp. Tall trees with twisted branches blocked out most of the sky. Strange sounds filled the air. Clicking, howling, the wet noise of something large moving through water nearby. Clickseth stumbled out of the pod and immediately fell into the mud. This is horrible. Everything is wet and smells terrible. I cannot see the sun. I think something is watching us. Maya helped the Chirix stand up. She looked around, studying their surroundings. The trees could provide materials for shelter. The water, once purified, would keep them alive. The sounds of animals meant there was food available. This swamp was dangerous, yes, but it was also full of resources. She smiled. This reminds me of Florida, she said. My family went there for spring break once. A gator tried to eat our cooler. What is a gator? Clickseth asked. What is a Florida? What is spring break? Florida is a place on my planet. A gator is a large reptile with many teeth. Spring break is when students take a vacation. Maya pulled out her knife and began cutting vines from a nearby tree. Come on, we need to build a shelter before it gets dark. You are insane, Clickseth said, but it followed her anyway. Somewhere in the swamp, something roared. The sound echoed through the trees and made the water ripple. Clickseth froze in terror. Maya just glanced in the direction of the noise and made a mental note. Predator. Large. Probably territorial. They would need to avoid that area. She kept cutting vines. The survival exercise had begun, and Maya Chen was exactly where she belonged. 6 hours after the drop, the first emergency beacons started flashing. On board the Crucible of Valor, the instructors watched their screens with grim faces. 23 cadets had already called for evacuation. Some were injured, some were poisoned. 3 beacons had gone silent completely, which meant those cadets were probably dead. The Nexarian stalkers were hunting early this season. Commandant Vrexal stood at the main display with his arms crossed. He watched the dots representing each cadet move slowly across the map. Most of them were scattered and confused. Some had not moved at all since landing, but one small group was different. Who is that? He asked, pointing at a cluster of dots in the southern swamp. An instructor pulled up the information. Cadet Chen, sir, the human. She has already established a fixed position and appears to be constructing something. Vrexal leaned closer to the screen. Show me. The orbital camera zoomed in. The image showed a small clearing in the swamp. A raised platform made of logs and vines sat above the waterline. A fire burned in a stone circle, and the human girl was skinning something large and dead. What is that creature? Vrexal asked quietly. A Nexarian mauler, sir. Class 2 predator. Weighs approximately 150 kilograms. The instructor sounded confused. She appears to have killed it with a rock. Vrexal said nothing. He just stared at the screen. Down on the planet's surface, Maya wiped sweat from her forehead and continued her work. The mauler had attacked them 2 hours ago. It had burst from the water with teeth like knives and claws that could tear through metal. Clickseth had screamed and fallen over. Maya had grabbed a heavy stone and hit the creature in the head. Then she hit it again, and again, and again until it stopped moving. Now she was turning it into dinner. I do not understand, Clickseth said. The Chirix sat on the platform watching Maya work with a mixture of horror and fascination. That creature has killed Academy cadets before. Trained soldiers have died fighting maulers. You beat one to death with a rock. It was a good rock, Maya said. She cut a strip of meat from the creature's leg. Heavy, good edge. I made it into a hand axe first. That helped. You made a weapon out of a rock. Humans have been doing that for 2 million years. Maya held up the meat and examined it. The color looked okay. The smell was strong but not rotten. She placed it on a flat stone near the fire to cook. We're pretty good at it by now. Clickseth shook its head. Your species is very strange. Over the next few days, other cadets found their way to Maya's camp. First came a Velith named Kristara. She was a crystalline being, beautiful and fragile looking, with a body that reflected light in rainbow patterns. When she stumbled into the clearing, two of her limbs were cracked and broken. "Please," she gasped, "I need help. Something attacked me. I cannot walk properly." Maya helped her onto the platform. She examined the broken limbs carefully. The crystal was fractured but not shattered. With the right support, it might heal. "I need straight sticks and more vines," Maya told Clickseth. "We're going to make splints." "You know medicine?" Christera asked weakly. "I know first aid. Every human learns basic survival skills." Maya began binding the broken limbs with sticks and vines to hold them steady. "This will hurt, but it should help you heal straight." 2 days later, a pair of Morvani arrived. They were gelatinous beings that moved by flowing across the ground. They could not figure out how to use the water purifiers in their survival kits. They had been drinking swamp water directly and were very sick. Maya taught them how the purifiers worked. She boiled extra water for them. She found plants that seemed to help settle their stomachs. Within a day, they were recovering. By the end of the first week, 12 cadets had gathered at Maya's camp. They came from different species and different backgrounds. Some had been rivals. Some had barely spoken before. But now they worked together, following the human girl's instructions. She taught them how to find food. Some plants were safe to eat. Others were poisonous. Maya showed them how to test unfamiliar foods by touching them to their skin first, then their lips, then eating only small amounts. She taught them to watch what the local animals ate. If the animals avoided something, they should avoid it too. She taught them how to build better shelters, how to make tools from wood and stone, how to read tracks in the mud to know what creatures lived nearby. She taught them how to make fire, which amazed most of the aliens. Fire was dangerous. Fire was wild. But Maya controlled it like it was nothing. On the 7th night, the stalkers came. The cadets heard them first. Low growls in the darkness. The sound of large bodies moving through shallow water. Yellow eyes reflected the firelight, circling the camp. There were 6 of them, each one the size of a small vehicle. Most of the cadets froze in terror. The stalkers had already killed 3 cadets in other parts of the swamp. These were apex predators, the top of the food chain on Nexar 7. Nothing was supposed to fight them. Maya stood up and grabbed a burning branch from the fire. "Everyone get behind me," she said calmly. "Clickseth, Christera, grab the spears we made. Morvani, make yourselves as big as possible. We need to look like we're not worth the trouble." "You want to fight them?" Christera asked in disbelief. "I want to scare them away. Predators don't like prey that fights back. It's not worth the risk of injury." Maya waved the torch at the closest stalker. Sparks flew through the air. The creature flinched back. "Come on, get loud, make noise." The cadets began shouting and banging tools together. Maya advanced toward the stalkers, swinging her torch. The fire reflected in their eyes. They were hungry, but they were also cautious. This prey was acting wrong. This prey was not running. This prey had bright, painful light. One by one, the stalkers retreated into the darkness. When they were gone, Maya sat down by the fire. Her hands were shaking slightly. The other cadets stared at her like she was some kind of monster. "How did you know that would work?" Clickseth asked. "I didn't," Maya admitted. "But I know predators. They want easy meals. If we made ourselves look like too much trouble, they would find easier prey." She poked the fire with a stick. "It's what my ancestors did for thousands of years, back when we were the ones being hunted." Clickseth sat down beside her. "Your planet must be a very dangerous place." Maya thought about Earth. She thought about tigers and sharks and crocodiles. She thought about hurricanes and earthquakes and volcanoes. She thought about diseases and parasites and the 1,000 other things that tried to kill humans every single day. "Yeah," she said softly. "It kind of is." Above them, in orbit, Commandant Vrexall had pulled up the file on Earth. He was beginning to read it very carefully. The map showed 2 paths to the extraction point. The first path went around the shattered highlands. It followed rivers through dense jungle and crossed relatively flat terrain. It was the safe route. Most surviving cadets were taking it. The journey would take about 22 days. The second path went straight through the highlands. It crossed volcanic mountains where poisonous gas leaked from cracks in the ground. The rocks were sharp and unstable. The temperature swung from freezing cold at night to burning hot during the day. Acid rain fell without warning. No one took this path. Maya pointed at the second path. "We go through the middle," she said. Her group of 12 cadets stared at her. They had learned to trust Maya over the past week. She had kept them alive when everything on this planet wanted them dead. But this seemed like madness. "That route will kill us," Kristara said. Her crystal limbs had healed enough for her to walk, but she still moved carefully. "The atmospheric toxicity alone is lethal to most species." "I grew up in a city called Los Angeles," Maya replied. "The air there is worse on a bad day." "The temperature changes will damage my crystalline structure," Kristara continued. "The Morvani cannot survive extreme heat. Clixeth's exoskeleton will crack in the cold." Maya nodded. She had already thought about these problems. "We travel at night when it's cooler. We rest in caves during the day. I'll make breathing masks from local plants to filter the bad air. We move fast and we don't stop." She looked at each of them. "If we take the long route, we'll run out of food. Half of us won't make it. But if we go through the highlands, we'll reach the extraction point in 9 days. We'll have time to rest and recover before the deadline." "And if we encounter problems," one of the Morvani asked, "then we solve them. Together." The group was silent for a long moment. Then Clixeth stepped forward. "I trust you," the Chirrut said. "You have not led us wrong yet. I will follow you through the Fire Mountains." One by one, the others agreed. Even Kristara, who had the most to fear from the journey, nodded her acceptance. They had come too far to turn back now. The march began the next morning. Maya led them through the foothills as the sun set. The ground changed from soft mud to hard rock. The trees disappeared, replaced by fields of black stone and steaming vents. The smell of sulfur filled the air, sharp and unpleasant. She had made breathing masks from broad leaves and wet moss. They filtered out the worst of the toxic fumes. The masks were uncomfortable and had to be changed every few hours, but they worked. The first night was hard. The ground was uneven and covered with loose stones that shifted underfoot. Several cadets stumbled and fell, but Maya kept them moving at a steady pace, stopping only to check on the injured and adjust their equipment. During the day, they sheltered in caves. Maya taught them to check for dangerous animals first, to look for signs of gas buildup, to sleep in shifts so someone was always watching. The caves were dark and cold, but they kept the group safe from the burning sun. On the third day, they encountered the geysers. Columns of boiling water shot up from the ground without warning. The spray could cook flesh in seconds. One wrong step could mean instant death. The cadets wanted to turn back, but Maya studied the ground carefully. "Look at the rocks," she said. "See how some of them are stained white? That's mineral buildup from the water. The geysers always erupt in the same places. We just need to avoid the white rocks." She led them through the geyser field like she was walking through a park. "Left around this rock, right past that vent. Pause when the ground rumbles." The cadets followed in her exact footsteps, too scared to breathe. They made it through without a single burn. On the 5th day, the acid rain came. The sky turned green, and the air smelled like metal. Maya knew what was coming. She had read about acid rain in her survival training back on Earth. This was worse than anything on her home planet, but the principles were the same. "Find shelter now," she shouted. "Cover any exposed skin. Do not let the rain touch you." The group scrambled into a rocky overhang just as the first drops fell. The rain hissed when it hit the ground. It ate through leaves and turned puddles into bubbling pools of poison. They waited for 6 hours until the rain stopped. The landscape looked burned and scarred, but they were unharmed. On the 7th day, Maya met the thornback. It was the largest creature she had ever seen. It stood 20 feet tall at the shoulder, with armor-plated skin and massive horns. It was territorial and aggressive. When it saw the group of cadets crossing its domain, it roared and charged. "Run!" Kristara screamed, but running would not work. The thornback was faster than any of them. It would catch the slowest cadets and kill them. Then it would catch the next slowest. Running meant death. Maya did something else. She ran toward the thornback. "Maya, no!" Clixeth cried. She did not stop. She sprinted straight at the giant creature, waving her arms and shouting. The thornback was confused. Prey did not act like this. Prey ran away. This tiny creature was running toward it. The thornback hesitated, and Maya ran past it. The creature turned and chased her. That was exactly what she wanted. She led it away from the group, running as fast as she could across the rocky terrain. The thornback followed, roaring in frustration. Maya ran for 6 hours. Humans were not the fastest creatures on Earth. They were not the strongest, but they had one advantage that no other animal could match. Humans could run for longer than anything else alive. It was called persistence hunting. Their ancestors had chased prey for days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. The thornback gave up after 6 hours. It simply could not keep going. It stopped, panting heavily, and watched the tiny human jog away into the distance. Maya circled back to find her group waiting nervously in a cave. "You're alive," Kristara breathed. "Of course I'm alive." Maya sat down heavily. Her legs ached and her lungs burned, but she was smiling. "Humans are built for running. We can go forever if we have to." Clixith stared at her. "Your species hunted by chasing animals until they died of exhaustion?" "Sometimes, when we had to." "That is the most terrifying thing I have ever heard." 2 days later, they emerged from the shattered highlands. The extraction valley spread out before them, green and beautiful after the volcanic wasteland. They had made it. 9 days, 0 casualties. Maya Chen had led 12 cadets through a place that should have killed them all, and she was barely even tired. The extraction valley was supposed to be safe. After surviving the swamps, the jungles, and the volcanic highlands, the cadets expected the final stretch to be easy. The valley was wide and open. Fresh water flowed from mountain streams. The deadline was still 11 days away. All they had to do was wait. They were wrong. Maya's group entered the valley from the south. They found chaos waiting for them. Dozens of cadets from other groups had already arrived. Many were injured. Some were fighting over supplies. And in the middle of the valley, a large group of Korthani cadets had built a fortress out of logs and stones. Their leader was a 7-foot reptilian named Drex. He was the son of a famous military family. He had never failed at anything in his life. He also hated Maya Chen with every fiber of his being. "The human arrives," Drex called out when he saw her. His voice dripped with contempt. "I wondered if you had died in the swamp. It would have saved me the embarrassment of sharing a graduation class with your primitive species." Maya ignored him. She was looking at the fires burning around his fortress. Large areas of grass and bushes had been set ablaze to clear a defensive perimeter. The smoke rose high into the sky. "You need to put those fires out," she said. Drex laughed. "I need to do nothing. I am in command here. My group controls the water supply and the best shelter. Everyone else follows my rules." "The fires are too big. The smoke will attract attention." Maya could feel something wrong. The ground beneath her feet was vibrating slightly. "And you're scaring the local wildlife." "The wildlife can burn for all I care." Maya looked toward the western edge of the valley. The vibration was getting stronger. She could hear something now, a low rumble like thunder that never stopped. "Everyone needs to move to high ground," she said loudly. "Right now." The cadets looked at her with confusion. Some of them recognized her from the academy. They had heard rumors about the human who killed a mauler with a rock. But Drex stepped forward, blocking her path. "You do not give orders here, human. You are nothing. Your species is nothing. The only reason you are at the academy is because of political pressure from your worthless planet." The rumble grew louder. The ground was shaking hard enough to make stones jump. "Move," Maya said. Her voice was flat and cold. "Now!" She pushed past Drex and ran toward a small hill at the edge of the valley. Her group followed without question. Other cadets, the ones who had seen what she could do, followed as well. Within minutes, nearly 60 cadets had climbed to higher ground. Then the behemoths arrived. They came from the west in a massive herd. Each one was bigger than a house. They weighed over 3 tons and were covered in thick armor plating. Their feet were the size of tables. When they ran, the earth trembled like an earthquake. The smoke from Drex's fires had panicked them. They were stampeding directly toward the valley, directly toward the cadets who were still on the ground. Drex's fortress was directly in their path. "No," Kristara whispered. "They'll be crushed." There were still 40 cadets down there. Some of them were too injured to run. Others were frozen with fear. Drex himself stood at the center of his fortress, staring at the approaching wall of flesh and bone. Maya did not think. She acted. She grabbed a burning branch from a nearby fire and sprinted down the hill. Clixith screamed her name, but she did not stop. She ran toward the stampede, toward the thousands of tons of angry animals that could crush her like an insect. The behemoths were herd animals. Maya had studied them before the exercise. They were not predators. They were not aggressive by nature. They stampeded because they were scared. And like all herd animals, they followed patterns. They moved as a group. They avoided obstacles that seemed dangerous. Maya needed to become an obstacle. She reached the center of the valley just as the first behemoths arrived. They were enormous up close. Their breath was hot and smelled like grass. Their footsteps made her bones shake. Maya planted herself in the ground and raised her torch high. "Come on," she screamed. She waved the fire back and forth in wide arcs. "This way! Follow the light!" The lead behemoth saw the fire. It flinched away from the flames, turning slightly to the left. The behemoths behind it followed. Then more turned, and more, and more. Maya ran to the right, still waving her torch. Another group of behemoths curved away from her. She ran to the left. More behemoths turned. She was splitting the herd. The stampede that had been a single deadly wall became two separate streams. They thundered past the valley on either side, missing the cadet camp by mere meters. Maya stood in the middle, untouched, as hundreds of massive animals flowed around her, like water around a stone. When it was over, the silence was deafening. Maya lowered her torch. Her arms were sore, and her throat was raw from screaming. But she was alive. Everyone was alive. She walked back to Drex's ruined fortress. The fires had been stamped out by the behemoths passing. The Korthani was sitting in the mud, his scales pale with shock. "You almost killed everyone," Maya said. Her voice was calm but hard. "Your fires panicked the herd. Your pride kept people from moving to safety. 40 cadets almost died because you wanted to feel powerful." Drex opened his mouth to speak. "Don't," Maya cut him off. "I don't want to hear excuses. You are going to help rebuild the camp. You are going to share your supplies with everyone. And you are going to put out any fire bigger than a cooking flame." She pulled a bone from the ground and began shaping it with her knife. "We still have 11 days until extraction. That's 11 more days for this planet to try to kill us. We survive together or we die alone. Those are the only choices." She handed him the bone. It was shaped like a shovel. "Start digging a latrine," she said. "The camp needs proper sanitation." Drex took the shovel. His claws tightened around it. For a moment, Maya thought he might attack her. But then he saw the other cadets watching. He saw the look in their eyes. They were not looking at him. They were looking at her. He started digging. That night, Maya organized the entire camp. She set up guard rotations and water collection systems. She taught the cadets how to build proper shelters and store food safely. She treated the injured and comforted the scared. 62 cadets went to sleep that night in the extraction valley. Not one of them doubted who was really in command. The extraction shuttles arrived on the 30th day. Commandant Vrexal stood at the loading ramp, watching the cadets file onto the transport ships. He had been doing this job for 90 cycles. He had seen thousands of young soldiers break themselves against the trial of tempering. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The survival rates for this exercise were unprecedented. Of the 200 cadets who had dropped onto Nexar 7, 162 had survived. That was the highest number in Academy history. The expected casualty rate for cadets was usually around 40%. This year it was less than 20, and the reason was walking toward him right now. Maya Chen looked different than she had 30 days ago. Her uniform was torn and dirty. Her skin was tanned and scratched. But she walked with the confidence of someone who had conquered a world. Behind her came 34 cadets from a dozen different species. Not a single one of them had died under her leadership. "Cadet Chen," Vrexal said, "report to my office once you have been cleared by medical." Maya saluted. "Yes, Commandant." 3 hours later, she stood in his private office aboard the Crucible of Valor. The walls were covered with screens showing footage from the exercise. Every moment had been recorded by orbital cameras. Vrexal had watched all of it. "Sit down," he said. Maya sat. She was still calm. Most cadets would be nervous in this situation. They would be wondering if they were in trouble. Maya simply waited. I have been in the military for 90 cycles, Vrexile began. He turned to face her, his yellow eyes studying her carefully. I have fought in wars. I have trained soldiers. I have watched cadets die on 7 different death worlds, and I have never seen anything like what you did down there. Maya said nothing. You killed a Nexarian mauler with a rock. Vrexile pulled up the footage on a nearby screen. You scared off a pack of stalkers with fire and noise. You led 12 cadets through the shattered highlands with 0 casualties. You outran a thornback for 6 hours. You split a behemoth stampede by standing in front of it. He leaned forward, his scales catching the light. You treated a Class 3 death world like it was a vacation. Permission to speak freely, sir? Maya asked. Granted. Maya stood up and walked to the display screen. She pulled up a file she had prepared during the medical examination. It was a comparison chart between Nexar 7 and Earth. Nexar 7 has 0.93 Earth gravity, she said. My homeworld is heavier. The air here has 20% oxygen. Earth has 21%. The average temperature on Nexar 7 is 28 degrees. Earth ranges from -60 to 50 degrees depending on location and season. She pulled up more data. Nexar 7 has 6 apex predators. Earth has thousands: lions, tigers, bears, sharks, crocodiles, wolves, venomous snakes, poisonous spiders. We have animals that can kill with a single bite and plants that can dissolve flesh. She paused. And those are just the big threats. More images appeared. Microscopic organisms, bacteria, viruses, parasites. Human bodies are constantly fighting invisible enemies, diseases that can kill millions, parasites that eat us from the inside. Our immune systems are in a permanent state of war. Maya turned to face the Commandant. The Academy classified Nexar 7 as a Class 3 death world. By those same standards, sir, Earth would be a Class 12. Vrexall stared at her. There is no Class 12. No, sir, there isn't. Because the Galactic Union has never met a species that evolved on a world like mine? The Commandant was silent for a long moment. He looked at the data on the screen. He looked at the small, fragile-looking human standing in front of him. He thought about everything he had seen during the exercise. Your ancestors, he said slowly, they hunted by chasing animals until they died of exhaustion? Yes, sir. We called it persistence hunting. And they made weapons from rocks? For over 2 million years, sir. Before we had metal, before we had fire. We survived by being stubborn and creative. Vrexall let out a long breath. I read your planet's history files. Your species has only had space travel for a few hundred years. Before that, you spent most of your existence fighting each other. We did, sir. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy cities. You created technology that could end all life on your planet, and then you kept making more of it. Yes, sir. And despite all of that, your species survived, thrived, spread across your world, and then reached for the stars. The Commandant shook his head. I thought humans were weak because you are small and soft and fragile. I was wrong. You are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. Maya smiled slightly. We prefer to think of ourselves as determined, sir. 3 months later, the Galactic Union Planetary Classification Board issued an emergency revision. Earth was reclassified as a Class 10 death world, the highest rating that existed. Warning beacons were placed in the surrounding space. Travel advisories were issued to all Union species. The Academy was flooded with human applications. 3,000 young men and women from Earth wanted to prove themselves among the stars. The admissions board did not know how to handle them. Commandant Vrexall personally approved every single application. Maya Chen graduated at the top of her class. She was offered positions in every branch of the Union military. She turned them all down. Instead, she requested a teaching position at the Academy. She wanted to train the next generation of cadets. Her first class included Clickseth, Kristara, and both Morvani from her survival group. They had all passed their trials and earned their places. They had all requested to serve under her command. On the first day of training, Maya stood before a room full of nervous alien cadets. They looked at her with fear and respect. They had heard the stories. They had seen the footage. They knew what this small human was capable of. "Welcome to survival training," Maya said. "My name is Instructor Chen. Over the next 6 months, I'm going to teach you how to stay alive when everything around you wants you dead." She pulled out a small bag and placed it on her desk. Inside were ingredients for something called s'mores: chocolate, graham crackers, and marshmallows. She had brought them all the way from Earth. "But first," she said with a smile, "I'm going to teach you how to roast marshmallows. Because survival isn't just about fighting, it's about keeping the things that make life worth living." She lit a small fire in a metal container on her desk. The cadets watched in fascination as she demonstrated the proper technique for roasting a marshmallow. Golden brown on the outside, soft and melted on the inside. Clickseth tried first. The Chirix burned its marshmallow completely and looked devastated. "That's okay," Maya said gently. "It takes practice." "Everything does." Kristara took careful notes. The Morvani wobbled with excitement. Even the tough-looking Korthani cadets leaned forward with interest. Outside the window, the stars sparkled in the endless darkness of space. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning through the void. A Class 10 Deathworld. A planet of monsters and disasters and a species that refused to die. And in a small classroom on a military station, a human girl was teaching aliens how to make s'mores. The galaxy would never be the same.